Hello and welcome to Fat Loss Fridays, and today we are looking at which is better for fat loss, a high carb low fat diet or a high fat low carb diet. And it's funny, when it comes to diets, dieting is like religion. If you're doing a high carb low fat diet, people will look at you as if you just kicked a puppy, whereas other individuals will shake their head in disgust if they hear you're on a low carb diet right now. Understanding nutritional sciences is very complicated and there's a lot of emotion involved, but it's really important for us to separate the emotion from the science. So today I'm going to delve into for fat loss specifically, which is better, a low carb diet or a low fat diet. So first I'm going to touch on the argument for a low carb diet. This is the argument that many people will present to say that a low carb diet is better for fat loss. The idea is that a low carb diet will have lower levels of secretion of insulin, which should help with fat loss. A low carb diet also, because a higher proportion of calories coming from fat, should increase fat oxidation. Thus, this should lead to more fat loss. Not just that, but anecdotally is you hear so many people having very good success, especially in the short term, on a low carb diet. Now I'm not going to touch on that right now, I'm going to touch on that a little bit later. But it's really common to hear people lose a couple of kilos in the first couple of weeks. Now what about the argument for a low fat diet? Now, the argument from a low-fat diet stems from the idea that if you take in less fat, you're going to store less fat and you're going to utilize more fat from your body fat stores. Carbs are also surprisingly rarely converted to fat, so this is another argument put forward, although there are many different issues with this argument. So what does actual research say? A 2015 study from Kevin Hall and colleagues looked into answering this question: which was better for fat loss, a low-carb, high-fat diet, or a low-fat, high-carb diet? For this study, 19 subjects were selected. The individuals received a eucaloric diet for 5 days before being assigned to a calorie-reduced diet, either being low-carb or low-fat, but protein and calories being equal. The individuals kept with the diet for 6 days. There was then a 2 to 4 week washout period before again being assigned a eucaloric diet for 5 days and then 6 days of the other diet intervention. Participants spent 10 days total in a metabolic chamber. Now, a metabolic chamber is just this really fancy room where they can assess every aspect of your metabolism and every bit of food you're consuming. This helps take away common issues with nutritional sciences such as compliance and inaccurate measurements of total caloric intake and total caloric expenditure. So what were the results of this study? The high carb, low fat group actually burnt more body fat than the low carb, high fat group. And researchers stated, whereas carbohydrate restriction led to sustained increases in fat oxidation and loss of 53 grams a day of body fat, fat oxidation was unchanged by fat restriction, leading to 89 grams a day of fat loss and was significantly greater than carbohydrate restriction. See, fat loss is determined by the difference in fat intake and fat oxidation. So even though the low carb group oxidized more fat, they also took in more fat in their diet. And even though the reduced fat group had a lower fat oxidation group, they also took in less fat in their diet. Now, something else which researchers found was the weight loss in the low carb group was much higher than the low fat group. And the researchers stated, both diets led to weight loss, with the reduced carb diet resulting in greater weight loss than the reduced fat diet. So just to recap, the low fat diet had more fat loss, but the low carb diet had more weight loss. And this is one of the reasons, anecdotally, that people have such good short-term success with low-carb diets, is they'll lose a massive amount of weight in a real short period of time. You'll see people losing 2 or 3 kilos in the first week. Remembering this is weight loss and not fat loss. Understanding that stored carbohydrates hold water. So if you're depleting your stores of stored carbohydrates, the amount of water you're holding onto is going to be much lower, which is the reason for the high weight loss in a low-carb diet. Now, for fat loss, does this little bit of research say one diet is better than the other for fat loss? And the answer is no. There really isn't a massive difference at all. It demonstrates that for fat loss, creating an energy deficit is what's required. If lowering carbohydrates allows you to do that, do that. If lowering fats allows you to create that deficit, lower your fats. Or if you prefer, just lower both to a lesser extent. This also means that if some days you're really craving a food that's higher in carbohydrates, that you can still eat that food and lose weight. You'll just be required to reduce your fats that day. Or if you want to go to that restaurant and have that dinner, which you know is going to be higher in fats, it means that you can still have that dinner, you just need to lower your carbohydrates throughout the rest of the day and at that meal. All this bit of research says is that when it comes to fat loss, you have flexibility. At the end of the day, adherence is what matters long term. One thing you would have noticed from this study is that between groups is they both create the same caloric deficit. They also equated protein, which is really important. Is in research, when we see one group do much better than the other group, it's normally because calories and or protein aren't equated for. Protein obviously has a higher thermic effect of food, so in relation to our metabolism, it's also more filling. And if you have two different dietary interventions and the energy balance equation is very different, this one is in more of a deficit than this one, is when it comes to fat loss, is this one's going to do better. It doesn't matter the macronutrient composition, this one is creating more of a deficit. Which means that for fat loss, what's important is making sure we're getting an adequate amount of protein for our goals, and also making sure that we're consuming the right amount of calories each and every day. Now, you don't necessarily have to count calories. There are many other methods out there to create an energy deficit, but I won't be running through them in this video specifically. Just understand that when calories and protein are equated for, the composition of our remaining calories, how much from carbohydrates and how much from fat, doesn't really matter when it comes to fat loss. So thank you for watching Fat Loss Fridays. Make sure to like this video, make sure to subscribe. I look forward to bringing you more Fat Loss Fridays in the future.